My lords.
My lords, I'd like to start, actually, before making the point about the amendment, by acknowledging that my noble friend on the front bench rightly feels a little blindsided by this amendment, and I really do apologise to her for that. I'm a newbie on the back benches, and I've clearly got much to learn about the process here. But in my defence, if I may, I did share plans and indeed the wording of the amendment with my friend the Secretary of State, who I'm pleased to say was excited by much of the contents, although not all of the contents of the amendment. Now I'm going to be brief because the proposal is relatively simple, and I think in many respects it speaks for itself. But before I describe the proposal, I do want to heap praise and thanks upon a campaigner who is simply formidable. And I'm pleased to say she's in the gallery today, probably holding a Swift box, Hannah Bourne-Taylor, who has single-handedly made what for many people appears to be a niche concern into a national campaign, not least by walking naked through London, painted as a Swift and causing quite a stir, as you can imagine. But she really has turned this into a national cause, and I think it is because of her that this amendment even exists. Now, my lords, back in 2002, the British Trust for Ornithology cited the loss of cavity nesting sites as the key factor in the decline of cavity nesting urban birds. And since then, in 2002, 4 species, the house martin, starlings, swifts, and house sparrows, have all been added to that dreaded red list, that list of species of particular concern, species, crudely speaking, that face extinction. And worst hit among them are house martins, with the decline, and I have to say, when I was preparing my notes, I was going to say 37% decline, but I've since discovered that the figure is even worse. It's 50%. And swifts, too, have suffered horrifically. Their breeding population declined by 60% between 1995 and 2020, and that number continues to sink. But despite broad agreement, not just in this place, or indeed the other place, but across the whole country, that the UK, which is one of the most nature-depleted countries on the planet, requires very urgent action to try to turn around these trends, indeed to introduce emergency measures to turn around these trends. The reality is that nothing yet of any real substance has been done. And the problem, as noble lords all know well, no doubt, is that in the context of cavity nesting creatures like swifts, their sites have simply been lost. And it's not because of evil intent, it's not because of malign intent, it's because of things like repairs, it's things like house modernization, insulation even, something which all of us in this house know that we would like to see much more of. So this simple proposal of including swift bricks in new build is key. Their inclusion isn't just about providing a supporting hand to a species in need, a species in trouble. It's actually critical. Indeed, it is essential. Modern new build homes are simply not designed nowadays to accommodate nature. And in particular, swifts, as noble lords know, rely completely on cavities. And without those cavities, there are no safe, there are no permanent nesting sites for them in Britain. Without cavities, man-made cavities in this sense, those birds have no future in this country. And it's crazy, and it's something I learned, I'm afraid, only recently, that the simple swift brick isn't even included in the biodiversity net gains metric. So the amendment, the proposal that we're here to discuss today, well, it really couldn't be much simpler. The swift brick is a zero maintenance solution. It's effectively just a brick in a wall. You can add it to a building just as you would add a brick to a building. And in the context of a refurb or a new build, it's cheap. It costs £30 or thereabouts. And we know that they work. We know they work because wherever they've been tried, wherever they've been installed, they work. Surveys conducted, for example, on the Duchy estates, where Swift bricks have been installed in numerous buildings, have resulted in a staggering 96% occupancy rate, and even that number continues to grow. Obviously, not all of the bricks are used by swifts. I've heard that as one of the counter-arguments. What about other creatures using these boxes? To which my answer is, so what? Heaven forbid that a house sparrow might decide to use one of these swift boxes. Who wouldn't be filled with joy at the prospect? It just seems to me to be such a non-argument as to almost not merit discussion. Now, if this amendment is adopted, and I really do beseech colleagues to support it, if it becomes national policy to ensure installation of these magical, simple, cheap bricks in all new homes, will not only be helping counter the tragic loss of cavity nesting birds, will be directly helping the government itself meet what are, let's remember, legally binding targets to halt biodiversity loss by the end of this decade, by 2030. Now, this measure has unanimous support. Not all measures have unanimous support. This has unanimous support from ornithologists, all of whom agree, all of whom have gone to great lengths to explain that there is no downside. And by the way, I can add that swifts don't eat vegetation. Swifts eat insects. They particularly enjoy mosquitoes. They eat mountainous volumes of mosquitoes. So there's yet another bonus to encouraging swifts in and around our homes. I'm told they also don't leave droppings. There is a reason for that I'm not going to go into. I'm sure the expert up here in the gallery will know, but they don't leave droppings underneath their nest boxes. They tidy, I'll tell you what they do. They eat them, I'm afraid. They eat them probably to recycle the mineral content. I don't know why, but whatever reason, they remove them. They are very tidy, very conscientious, very thoughtful creatures. Now, this amendment is also flexible for the developers, and those I've heard from are supportive, all of them. There's one major house builder, Thacum, I hope I pronounced the name correctly, that has actively appealed for an industry-wide commitment. Very recently, the Irish Citizens' Assembly on Biodiversity voted to include swift bricks in all new builds. In the Netherlands, swift bricks are already installed as a mitigation measure. And there have been suggestions, and I understand where those suggestions have come from, that this should be a voluntary measure. I get that. No one wants excessive bureaucracy. No one wants excessive mandation. But I'm afraid we know that that hasn't worked. And it's not through lack of caring. Who doesn't want to see swifts flying in and around, maybe not in, but around their homes and gardens? Who doesn't feel better, frankly, when they have greater proximity to nature? Petition, in fact, I should say, that was initiated by Hannah in the gallery, attracted 110,000 signatures. And on the back of...
My noble friend, but my noble lord should not refer to people in the gallery.
There we are. As I said at the beginning, I'm a newbie on the back benches, and yet another rule that I have learnt. I will cease referring to the person in the gallery. But 110,000 signatures were collected by the person in the gallery. And I think that's pretty impressive given the subject matter that we are talking about. Look, national legislation is necessary. It's necessary because of the urgency of the situation. We've debated the issue over and over again. We understand that this country is in the midst of a biodiversity collapse. National legislation is necessary because nowhere near enough swift boxes have been installed, despite swift bricks being nationally promoted since 2019, including in guidance in the National Planning Policy Framework. Not to diss the NPPR, it is a valuable piece of literature, but it has been largely ignored in the context of the issue that we're discussing here today. There have been a paltry 20,000 boxes installed at best. That is an optimistic assessment. The local process, as district councillors and the vice chair of the Association of Local Government Ecologists, have all been clear that the current situation is not enough. We're just simply not seeing take-up of these swift boxes. Of 455 local planning authorities in England, just 9 have planning conditions around SWIFT boxes. So the voluntary approach does not work. We're asking here for something so small, so simple, so inexpensive, but something that will have a gigantic impact on these irreplaceable, iconic creatures. And I really do encourage the government to think again about its opposition to a measure which is wildly popular and would do so much good for this country.